Chúng tôi xin cảm ơn sự theo dõi trở lại của quý vị khán thính giả trước phần thông tin thương mại của đài. Tô Uyên đã gửi đến cho quý vị cuộc phỏng vấn của chúng tôi với nữ diễn viên Parker Posey. Cuốn phim mới nhất của cô mang tên Irrational Man chính thức sẽ được phát hành vào cuối tuần này. Đây là cuốn phim được thực hiện bởi nhà làm phim rất là nổi tiếng và được yêu chuộng của Hollywood, Woody Allen, thưa quý vị. Cuối tuần này có một cuốn phim tài liệu rất là rất là hay nhưng mà cũng rất là cảm động, thưa quý vị, với tựa đề là The Look of Silence. Tuần trước chúng tôi đã có mặt ở trên thành phố LA ngồi xuống phỏng vấn nam đạo diễn trẻ. Thưa quý vị, đây là cuốn phim thứ nhì của anh, đó là nam đạo diễn Joshua Oppenheimer. Đây là một cái cuốn phim tài liệu nói về The Forgotten Genocide, cái cuộc diệt chủng của người Nam Dương vào năm 1965, thưa quý vị. Và đây là một cuốn phim mà anh đã gọi là rất là can đảm thực hiện ở phim tập 1, đó là The Act of Killing. Tập 2 này, The Look of Silence, là một cuốn phim độc lập mà do chính nam đạo diễn trẻ Joshua Oppenheimer thực hiện. Và đây là một trong những cuốn phim mà tôi nghĩ rằng là nên đáng xem, thưa quý vị. Sau đây chúng tôi xin được gửi đến quý vị cuộc phỏng vấn đặc biệt của Tô Uyên với nhà làm phim Joshua Oppenheimer về The Look of Silence. Joshua, I wanted to congratulate you for The Look of Silence, the second of your two films about genocide in Indonesia. It's really shocking and disturbing, but also very, very powerful. I have to say it was tough for me to finish the film, but I finished it. To begin, can you give us a little background about what initiated the genocide in Indonesia back in 1965?
So in 1965, there was a right-wing military coup in which the government of Sukarno, the president who led Indonesia from Dutch colonialism into independence, was overthrown. And the coup had the backing of the United States and most of the Western world. And within a year, somewhere between 500,000 and 2.5 million people were killed. And they were all accused. Any potential opponent of the new military dictatorship was accused of being a communist. These included the ethnic Chinese, teachers, writers,
farmers,
virtually every Indonesian filmmaker, and then any member of a union, which included farmers' cooperatives and plantation workers' unions. People were just slaughtered if they were seen as being critical of the new regime.
And why were the killers never brought to justice?
Because the killers have remained in power.
Until now.
Yeah, the military dictatorship, which came to power in 1965, formally ended in 1998. But what Indonesia had become over those years was an oligarchy, where extremely wealthy people who enriched themselves through theft and plunder and their proximity to the dictatorship basically have been able to buy elections, buy power, and in the post-dictatorship period. And even today, the military in Indonesia remains formally above the law, in the sense that if a military commander decides to massacre an entire village in Indonesia, they cannot be brought to justice in civilian courts. They're not subject to civilian law. The military would have to convene its own tribunal to try such a commander, which means that the military is above the law, and they therefore are the linchpin of this shadow state of gangsters and oligarchs, paramilitaries, intelligence services, and the military that has prevented Indonesia from having what we can call any real rule of law. The law does not apply equally to the most powerful as it does to the weakest.
So did being a foreign filmmaker help you at all in getting this film made?
Absolutely. I could never have made this film as an Indonesian filmmaker, but it would be too dangerous. But I always felt in making both The Act of Killing and the Look of Silence, which I see as one work, that the two films complete one another. It doesn't matter which you see first, but they're kind of single work. At least if you take The Look of Silence with the uncut version of The Act of Killing, the so-called director's cut in the United States, the two films are one work, and I could not have done this work if I were Indonesian. It would be too dangerous. But I always felt in doing this that I'd been entrusted by actually Adi's family, the family at the center of The Look of Silence, the broader community of survivors around them, and the human rights community in Indonesia to do this work that they could not safely do themselves. In that sense, rather than a foreign filmmaker who felt like I'd come in to expose this horrible situation to the world, I actually felt much more like a kind of agent of the survivors working to help them make a film that would intervene in this terrible, terrible situation of fear and silence inside Indonesia.
Are the survivors still are they feeling that they're still in fear and afraid for their lives and their family lives? One scene in the family when he already told his mom that he talked to the killers, he seems very calmed, like the most calm person or guy I ever known. Very intellectual, I'm sure. And his mom was so freaked out and said, why, you know? And even so, after 40 plus years, the family is still living in fear and living with the killers in the same proximity, in the same village, neighborhood. It must be difficult for the survivors to be in that situation.
Yeah, and that's what the film is about. What does it do to human beings to be afraid for 50 years? But, and the perpetrators still hold power, but the two films, The Act of Killing and The Look of Silence, have together helped to catalyze a fundamental transformation in how the media, the mainstream media, the public talk about the country's past and the legacy of that past in the present, the thuggery, the fear, the corruption. Before, with very few exceptions, the media would be silent about the genocide or talk about the heroic extermination of the communists. Now they talk openly about the genocide as a genocide and about the terrible the need for truth. And since The Look of Silence came out in Indonesia, the need for truth, reconciliation, and some form of justice. So there's a national conversation that's grown tremendously since these two films came out. The government made a statement that what happened in 1965 was a crime against humanity. The president recently said, perhaps certainly in response to this debate that the film has raised, that it's time to apologize to the victims and their families. So things are changing, but perpetrators remain powerful, and it does remain dangerous.
One of the scenes in the film last night when I saw was one of the perpetrators said, well, because the communists, they don't have religion, they don't believe in God, and you see these men, supposedly a very devout Muslim, and when you hear them reenact the scenes that they killed these innocent people. I mean, we don't know if those people were communists. It just that's what they heard, the rumor, right? And then when they talk about the killing of Adi's brother, Ramli, I couldn't control my tears. I was in pain. I felt what Ramli was going through at the time. What happened to his family? It's just I don't think I can ever watch The Act of Killing, to be honest with you, because this was already heartbreaking enough for me already. And you see Artie sitting there watching The Act of Killing. You see these these perpetrators reenact the scenes where they kill innocent people. What went through his mind, do you think?
Well, I think that, first of all, Adi's not watching The Act of Killing. He's watching clips that I shot, footage I shot with the perpetrators long before I'd even met the main character in The Act of Killing, long before I started making The Act of Killing. Adi's watching this material, first of all, horrified by the lies being told by the perpetrators about the victims. The perpetrators were not only Muslim, they were also Christian and in Bali, Hindu. They came from different religions. But the lie that the victims were atheists is something that was told, I think, mainly afterwards to justify their
actions, right?
So that people would have an excuse for what they did. You see, the perpetrators were killing their own neighbors, and they knew often, and they would know that their neighbors sometimes were the people who would do the call to prayer in the mosque or were religious people. And what I've learned from all of this is that somehow the human capacity for evil depends upon our ability to lie to ourselves. That is, to lie to ourselves, which means you know it's not true, but it still gives you comfort.
Justify your actions while you do the horrific things.
That's right.
In your life.
And this implies that the perpetrators are all human. They know what they've done is wrong, which is why they need to lie to themselves. And also, and the boasting of the perpetrators that you see in both my films is actually a manifestation of that lie. It's an attempt to take these rotten, bitter memories and sugarcoat them in the victor's history that they still have available to them because they're still in power, that would celebrate what they've done as heroic. That's the boasting. And I think Adi watching this is horrified, sad, disturbed, and trying to understand how these men can live a lie that they know is a lie and not see and blind themselves to the truth. And that blindness is really, that moral blindness is really what the film is about.
Great job, Joshua. Great job. Thank you so much for, making such two great films. Dạ vâng, The Look of Silence chính thức sẽ được trình chiếu tại vùng New York, miền Đông vào cuối tuần này. Tuần tới thì sẽ được trình chiếu tại bên LA cũng như là một số thành phố tại miền Tây. Và sau đó thì họ sẽ được trình chiếu rộng rãi trong vùng Bắc Mỹ. Thưa quý vị, đây là cuốn phim tài liệu rất là hay, rất là cảm động. Nói về cái cuộc diệt chủng mà đã bị quên lãng và đã xảy ra vào năm 1965 và do Joshua Oppenheimer thực hiện ở bên Nam Dương. Anh cũng cho biết rằng là anh chắc chắn nếu mà về Nam Dương á, thì có thể vô, nhưng mà sẽ không có mạng rời khỏi Nam Dương, bởi vì họ sẽ gọi là thủ tiêu anh nếu mà anh về Nam Dương, thưa quý vị, và anh đã biết được cái điều đó. That's it. Đến đây chúng tôi xin trân trọng kính chào tạm biệt tất cả quý vị và xin hẹn gặp lại quý vị vào chương trình kỳ tới.